like that. And let me share my screen here really quickly with a few things. So first thing that I want to get into is how the scanner works, kind of some basics around the quantum scanner, just so that for those of you guys that weren't on last week's call with Dr. Lee and Brandon Boyd, that you guys have an idea of what the scanner is, how it works, and how you can use it as well. And then we're going to get into a couple of things that I looked at today, a trade that I actually took as well. And but before we do that, we'll start with here. So, what's what happens in trading, right? The market can do one of three things. I talk about this every week on my sessions, right? The market can move in one of three directions. It's either moving in an uptrend, right? It's either moving in a downtrend or it's consolidating, right? It's not moving anywhere. It's just kind of stagnant in a certain area, right? So what this scanner does is it helps you identify if the market is either in an uptrend or in a downtrend, which we see here in the other picture, in the other example, right? But how does it do that? Right, so overall, in the middle of the screen, you have the primary trend line. And when the market is playing above this primary trend line, that means we have more bullish momentum in the market rather than bearish momentum, right? Bullish meaning the market is stronger, bearish meaning that the market is weaker. All right, so with the primary trend line being blue and everything else here that you see with the big up arrow here, the macro phase arrow, the micro arrows, the micro pullback, everything is blue, right? So they've made it very easy for us to see, okay, is the market in an uptrend or is the market in a downtrend? Blue means up, red means down, right? Put a blue in the chat for the uptrend that we're going to be talking about right now. So the primary trend line is one of the first things that you want to see. Is the market trading above that primary trend line? And in order to see if the market is actually ready to make another push higher or continue trending higher, is you want to see this macro phase arrow right here. That's the first thing that you want to see after the primary trend line is, do we have a macro phase arrow? This big arrow or triangle, if you want to call it that as well. That's, I mean, that's what it is, but an arrow, triangle, doesn't really matter. That's the first step that you want to see here, right? And from there, where do we go from there, right? We see that, oh, my screen's glitching a little bit. Let's go back to this one. We see that we have two different areas as well, right? We have micro arrows, which are the arrows underneath every single candlestick that you see, right? Then we have a micro pullback arrow or triangle, which is, when the market makes a little bit of a pullback, it'll give you another indication that the market pulled back, but it's still strongly considered in an uptrend, right? After we see this macro phase arrow, the big arrow. And then we also see microwave dots, right? These blue dots, sometimes they might be red as well, but the blue dots, that's what we want to look for, right? We want to see consistent micro arrows, the blue arrows under every single candle. Then we want to see either a micro pullback arrow or a microwave dot. One of these is going to be our more condensed or our highly favorable entry area, is the smaller arrows or the dots, right? In this case, blue, after we have the blue macro phase arrow, the big one. But before we kind of get into the trade, there's a few other things that need to be aligned as well, right? So at the top right, what we see here is the master strength panel, right? This basically shows you on every single time frame, on the 1 minute, the 5 minute, 15, 30. You can kind of set it up how you want, I believe, or it might be set like this. But in any ways, it shows you the overall strength on each time frame, right? So what does that mean for the news person on here? For each time frame, let's say we have a 1 minute time frame. You see each one of these candlesticks on this chart here that you see here, they're red, over here they're blue, and they're going up, up, up. Each one of those candlesticks is 1 minute of time that has passed, right? If it's a 5 minute chart, or on the 5 minute here, each one of these candles is 5 minutes of time that's passed, right? So each one of these candles represents 1 minute, 5 minute, 15 minutes of time, and so on, right? And what that means is with the strength panel, we want to see after this macro phase arrow that we got and our primary trend line is blue, we see that we got a micro pullback arrow or a microwave dot. We want this master strength panel, the score to be at least 55 or above, right? That's for a good score, and 60 above is a strong score, right? So anything above 55 is considered strong. Anything above or is considered good. Anything above 60 is considered strong. And that's one of the other key factors that we want to see before we enter into the market. And then the second one is the quantum oscillator buy zone right here at the bottom, right? So we have the red zone and the blue zone. We're looking at buys in this case. We want to see the oscillator being in the blue zone, right? If those things align, if you have the oscillator, the chart is in the blue, we see that we have our microwave dot or microwave pullback arrow, either one of the two. The score is at least 55 and above. We have the blue primary trend line, and to start us off, we have the up micro phase arrow, the blue one here. Those are the confirmations that you can say, okay, I can confidently enter into the market right now with this trade idea, right? And if you're thinking, how do I get into a sell, right? Because we can buy and sell, make money in these markets. It's the same thing for sells, except you're looking for now a down macro phase arrow, which is the big arrow pointing down, or the triangle. You want a red primary trend line. And then we're looking for the micro pullback arrow that's red, or the microwave dot that is red, and a score of at least 40 and below, right? 40 and below for the master strength panel. And you might ask yourself, what happens if, the panel is at a point where, it's not at above, 55 or below 40 for sells, that means that we're either in a pullback or we're in a consolidation, right? So I'll show you this right here. 45 to 50 is kind of like the neutral zone. 50 and up is a strong zone, or is strength towards the upside. 60 and above is the strong up strength. 45 and down, we have downward momentum. 40 and below is strong down strength, right? So these are the kind of the key things that you want to look for, right? The primary trend line, the macro phase arrow, micro pullback arrows, the microwave dot. Make sure that the panel is, either below 45 or above 50 for buys. And then for sells, of course, we want the quantum oscillator to be in the sell zone, which is the red zone above here. Right? So what does that look like on a chart? Well, let's kind of take a look at this. Right? So back here, it actually, I wish it didn't disappear on me. I was actually looking at Bitcoin, and I actually had entered a trade off of Bitcoin as well, just before the session, but the macro phase arrow that was pointing down actually disappeared. So what that looked like earlier, just to kind of give you guys an idea, we had a macro phase arrow right here. The market gave us an indication that, we're under the primary trend line. We had that macro phase arrow start right here. It was roughly at the beginning of the Asian session. And then from there, I was waiting to see what would happen, right? At this point, once that arrow is formed, there's not really much that we can go off of, right? We want to let the market play out a little bit and then see how it develops, right? Just because we see, if we go back here, just because we get this macro phase arrow, in this case, a down arrow, or if it's blue going the opposite way, just because we have that arrow does not give us the confirmation to enter the trade, right? We need to wait for all of the different things to line up. But in this case, right here is where we had that arrow. And then I let the market kind of develop. We had a relative score. Let me make this bigger here, actually. It's a little bit easier for you guys to see. we had a relative score of about 45 in this area, right? Just before we had this back here, for those of you guys that are just jumping on, we did have a macro phase arrow pointing to the downside, which is this big arrow here. We actually had a red one formed back here earlier today before the session, and I had actually gotten in on a trade here, but for some reason it has disappeared, probably because we have the blue arrow now being formed and Bitcoin is gaining bullish momentum again. But we had a bearish macro phase arrow here, right? We had one of the second confirmations that we're looking for. We were under the primary trend line, and then I was letting price develop, as I was saying, and didn't see anything. We were kind of in this gray zone like we're in right now, and then price had dropped a little bit lower and then pulled back, and we got this micro pullback arrow. Right here, you guys can see that it's still there, the micro pullback arrow, and we were actually sitting at about 42 score on the scanner, right? The score up here in the top right, we were sitting at a 42. I had gotten that arrow, and that was exactly where I had gotten into the market, right? From those things. And why did I get in here? Just the last confirmation as well is because if we look at the score here, right, or the oscillator, right in this area where I entered, we were in that zone, right? The last confirmation that I needed to enter into the trade, right? So after I seen these things develop, right, I entered into the market there, and from that point, after that candle closed, Bitcoin dropped an initial 240 pips, and in total, I got out at about 320 pips, but it dropped for about 370 pips from that confirmation that we had there. We had the primary trend line bearish, right? We had the macro wave arrow pointing down, which was the start of now we can look to see if the market's giving us more downward momentum and strength. If the scanner is going to, give us the following confirmations that we need, right? We broke down lower. We see the micro arrows all bearish, 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 bearish. We had a 42 score. We had the micro pullback arrow appear here. That's where we entered in, and Bitcoin dropped for about 370 pips. Right? Very, very easy tool to use, you guys. If you really sit down and go through the information and kind of take it step by step, look for all of these different things and wait for them to align, the scanner's telling you exactly what it wants to do. Right? And another thing that you could have done as well, which was actually talked about earlier this morning in their session with Brandon Boyd and Dr. Lee, was you see these lines here on the screen, right? These basically mark the 5-minute, 15-minute, and 30-minute or the first 5, 15, and 30 minutes of each session, right? So whether that's a New York session, a London session, the Asian session, which in this case it was the Asian session, it opens or it shows you the first 5, 15, and 30 minutes of that session, right? And from there, what that tells you is you're waiting for 3 things to happen, right? You're waiting for the 30-minute candle to close, right? Or the 30-minute line, which is this bottom one here. In this case, I was watching it. That's why I know that's the 30-minute close. We wanted that 30-minute line to appear. That means the first 30 minutes is done in that session, right? From there, we want the 3 candles consecutively either to close above the top of the 30 minutes, right? Which in this case is up here above the top of the 30 minutes, 3 consecutive candles. It doesn't matter. They can be bullish or bearish. And then from there, also in a bearish scenario, we want 3 candles to close below the 30-minute as well. It doesn't matter if they're bullish or bearish candles. And then what we look for is for a retracement back to this original line, right? Whether that's, in this case, the bearish line, which is the bottom of the 30 minutes, or the top. And then that's where we look for another either micro arrow or a microwave dot, which in this case, we had actually gotten an initial reaction right here off of this dot, and then another one right here off of this dot. So these two areas could have been another two areas that we could have got in the market. If you missed this initial entry from here, you could have had another opportunity to get in here for about 300 pips, or I guess again, if you got in here again, it would be around another 300 pips, maybe even a little bit more, about 350 pips. Still, you would have gotten roughly the exact same entry that I got up here, right? If you would have just understood how the first 30 minutes of a session works, right? You can see by this happening here, the first 30 minutes of the session, it shows you overall direction for the beginning of the session, right? We had that bearish momentum down. We kind of had that retracement in this area. We had those three consecutive candles that closed below this area. We had the microwave dot, number one and number two, that gave us our entries again up here for another 350 pips on Bitcoin, right? So right now, what are we looking at for Bitcoin? That was just two scenarios that I want to touch on today with you guys using the scanner, right? From there, right now, we're actually in an interesting area, right? We have, at the moment, we have the macro wave arrow that just appeared, right? Our blue arrow, which is the first thing that we want to look for. Right now, we have a blue primary trend line, right? And we just crossed over again. Our score is currently 55, which we want to see at a 50 or above. And what's the last thing that we're waiting for? Can somebody drop that in the chat? There's two things that we're waiting for. Let me see if you guys have been paying attention. Two more steps before we can actually enter into this trade here for a buy on Bitcoin. Micro arrow or dot. That's the one of them. Yes. And then there's one more thing that we're waiting for. Come on, guys. Somebody knows. I'm giving you a hint here. We're waiting for the oscillator, right? For the oscillator to be in the blue zone. That's the two things that we're waiting for right now. And then we can confidently enter into a trade on Bitcoin, right? Is every single trade that you take going to be a winning trade? No, that's not guaranteed with any strategy, right? You're going to have winning trades, you're going to have losing trades, but you're probably asking, like, how do I understand or how do I know where to put my stop loss and my take profit, right? So it's very, very simple. What you want to do is there's really a few options that you can do, right? Let's say Bitcoin, this is not an entry that I'm giving you guys. We're not taking buy ideas right now on Bitcoin. This is just an example purpose. Just want to clarify that. Let's say we got an arrow. Let me actually pull up an arrow here. Let's say we got our microwave arrow right here, right? We got the oscillators now in the blue. We got our dot. And we're looking to enter in this market, but we don't know where we want to put our stop loss. So one of two options that you can do is you can use the previous low that you have here, right? You can use this low as your stop loss. That's one option that you can do. A second option that you can do is you can do a pip count. If you have a certain pip count that you're always risking, if you're trading Bitcoin or a certain currency, you have a certain amount of pips that you always risk. You can risk that same amount of pips. Or what you can do is there's this kind of gray area in between the charts, right? On the top side and the bottom side. What you can do is if I zoom in on this a little bit, right? You can actually take this gray area and take from the top to the bottom and put it, let's say that's where we got in on our trade was at 105,581. You take the top of that line, put it there, and then the bottom of it is your stop loss right there. Right? So that's three different ways that you can do your stop loss. Either use the previous low that we had on that specific time frame that you're looking at. You can use this gray area, mark out the stop loss from your entry zone, or if you have a certain amount of pips that you always use for a specific currency, you can also do that as well. Right? So those are three different ways that you can use your stop loss. Also, two different ways to find your entries, right? That we went over today as well. And everything starts, if we go back to this right here, everything always starts with the macro phase arrow, right? The macro phase arrow, the primary trend line being the same color as that macro phase arrow, then waiting for either a micro pullback arrow or a microwave dot, and then making sure that our master strength panel is, in this case, if it's bullish, above 50, even above 60 is really good, strong score. And then the oscillator being in the blue. And then for the bearish trades or bearish momentum, we want the red macro phase arrow, the red primary trend line, right? The red micro pullback arrow, red microwave dot, and then the master strength panel to be at least 40 or below. Right? Does anybody have any questions in the chat? I'm going to open it up to a few questions here, and then I want to cover just a few more things here as well. We go back here. If you guys want to learn more in depth and understand how I was able to learn the scanner and how you're able to learn the scanner as well, what you can do is if you go into scanners or if you go into the Jifu website, on the scanners, you can go learn how to use scanners, and there's an area for Quantum Scanner. But if you actually go to home, click on Forex. This is on the Jifu Live, of course. Go to Forex, and then scroll down until you see Dr. Josh Lee and Brandon Boyd. Every single morning, this is Pacific Standard Time at 10 a.m. They're live every single morning, Monday through Friday. And then if you click on here as well, on their page, there's a few different ways that you can actually learn how to use the scanner. Is number one, tapping into their sessions. Two, watching their recorded sessions, right, that they've done from the past and previous sessions. And then three, if you actually click on courses underneath their page, if you click on courses, they have an introduction to the quantum scanner video. It's about 13 minutes long. It shows you exactly step by step how to use their scanner, right? Exactly how they use it, what they do, exactly what I went over with today. And then also, if you click on files and download this, you can actually get this exact slideshow that I have here that goes through each of the steps with you guys, right? Whether that's an uptrend, a downtrend, talking about the up strength, down strength, the consolidation. Everything you guys need here is in the slides as well. And then obviously in the live sessions with these guys every single day. If there's no questions in the chat, we're just going to see what Bitcoin's doing here because it is giving us kind of a decent area. But if there's nothing, oh, that's not the right scanner. Let's see. Back to Bitcoin. Oh, and that's another thing too. You guys can trade the scanner with any currency that you wish, right? So here you can see crypto. You click on that, and then it shows you every single crypto that you can trade. And if you want Forex, it shows you all the Forex pairs that you can trade with the scanner. If you want commodities or indices, sorry. There's all the indices here, the US 30, NASDAQ, S&P 500. And then if you want commodities or the precious metals, you got gold, silver, everything is there for you guys as well. Right? So you can really use this for any currency. You just have to make sure that you select the right one. Right? If you don't have the right one selected, you're going to be trading something else, and then the trade's not going to make sense once you enter it into MetaTrader. But let's see what Bitcoin is wanting to do here. At the moment we have a score of 48, which is too low to enter into anything. But we are currently sitting in that blue zone of the oscillator. We have the macro phase arrow that's pointing up. We have our current primary trend line is blue as well. We're just waiting for the market to give us a better score on the score panel and then a blue dot as well. Let's see if we can find something there in each of the chat as well. First 30 minutes session about the retracement. What exactly about the retracement, Jordan, do you want me to cover? If you want to drop that in the chat. That's one of these things too, right? You have to be patient with these things, guys, right? Because right now we see that we have the macro phase arrow, right? But we actually just transferred into a bearish primary trend line. We're currently not in the blue oscillator level, but we just got our blue dot. For me, this is not an entry because our score is sitting at 50. Right, so you want to make sure everything aligns before you enter these trades as well. Not just enter in because we have the arrow and then we just got the blue dot. Right, that's only two of the confirmations. Is it a potentially an entry that we can take and we can make money off of? Maybe. But to give us the best chance of getting the best entries in the market with the scanner, we want to make sure all of the all of the confirmations are lining up. Right, the oscillator, the blue macro phase arrow, the primary trend line, the score panel, and then either the microwave dot or the microwave pullback arrow. Line of retracement confirms you're going down. I see what you mean. So right here, these lines that you see, these are for the first 5 minutes, 15 minutes, and 30 minutes of every session that starts, right? So in this case, it would be the Asian session, or it's the London session, New York session, whatever session that you trade. This was specifically the Asian session start time. And then you can see for each one of those time frames, whether that's the 5 minute, 50 minute, or 30 minute, a new set of lines appears, right? And then you can see here is the 5 minute low is this line. The 5 minute high is this high, right? You can see the 15-minute high is up here. 15-minute low is a little bit lower than the 5 minute low. And then the 30-minute high is the high as well. And 30-minute low is right here, right? So the highs and lows of the 30 minutes, it's all the same, right? So if the 5 minute, let's say, spikes up to, in this case, let's say it spiked up to 106,000 on Bitcoin. And then after that, for the rest of the 15 minutes and 30 minutes, the price played below in like 105,700. That high of 106 on Bitcoin is the high for all three of those time frames, right? For the first 5 minute, 15 minute, and 30 minute. And same with the low. So if the low in this case is the 30-minute low that we got, that's the lowest time or the lowest price that Bitcoin was at within the first 30 minutes of the market open, right? For that specific session. So after you see those 30 minutes and you see the highs and the lows, you want to see one of two things happening. Either the market plays above or the market plays below, right? Either above this high or below the low. And what makes it so significant is if you see that the market is giving you three consecutive candles that are below the 30-minute low or above the 30-minute high. It doesn't matter if they are bearish candles or bullish candles. It could be either or. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be bullish for up and bearish for down. It can be both. But three consecutive candles that close below the low or above the high, right? So in this case, we had this candle, and this candle. Those were our first three consecutive ones in a row. From there, what we can see or what we can expect is the market to retrace back to this low or back to this high, right? In this case, if we had three candles that went like this and we had that breakout, if it came back and retested and gave us a dot here or an arrow, that could be our entry point as well, right? Or a re-entry point, which in this case, we have one dot here and another dot here. We could have had these two opportunities to enter in to the market for sells again, right? So that's kind of how the retracement works with this specific scanner, right? It's kind of unique how there's not just one way or two ways. There's like multiple different ways that you can actually get into the market and find your entries. But that's how the retracement works with this scanner. I hope that cleared up your question there, Jordan. Let's see here. Anything new? No, Bitcoin's not really showing us what it wants to do here. It's just kind of, you see how we have blue candles, but we have red micro arrows. You can see the red arrows, but the blue candles. That kind of means that we're in a consolidation, right? You can see that the strength the strength panel score is 50. It's gray. That means we're in a consolidation or in a retracement in a pullback area. So right now, we're just kind of waiting, sitting on our hands with Bitcoin specifically. Um, yeah. Does anybody have any other questions? If not, we're gonna leave it there for tonight's session. Hopefully, you guys all, learned something new and are gonna go out there and actually utilize the scanner and use it to your advantage. Because today, just before we started this session, we had a beautiful entry that we took off of here for some profit. And then again, we had that re-entry off of the market open or the session open, the Asian session open off of that retracement. And then we had another beautiful trade. So right now, like I said, just to recap, we don't have anything going here for Bitcoin, right? We're still waiting for the strength is now 51, which is good. We have our blue macro phase arrow that's showing us the strength to the upside, right? We're starting to cross back over into the blue primary trend line. But one thing that's missing is the oscillator in the blue zone. So that's one thing I'm going to wait for on Bitcoin to see when all of those things align. And then I'll be looking for a trade. But I hope you guys all got some value on tonight's call. And I hope to see you guys all next week as well. And, send me some screenshots and some pictures of the trades that you guys are taking with this scanner as well. It's actually really fun, really easy once you put the reps in. And, if you guys want some more help, you know, to go over some things, ask me a few more questions, let me know. I'm more than happy to jump on a one-on-one session with you guys and help you guys out with everything. But with that being said, we're going to leave it there for this week, and I will see you guys all on next week's session. Peace.